Hello and welcome. This YouTube is going to be regarding for those who get out of bed one day and decide they're going to go ahead and commit a crime. I can't say that there's probably too many individuals that do that, who wake up one morning and intentionally decide, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get out of bed and destroy the lives of victims, families, my employees, and then myself, and turn my world upside down and everyone around me. But for most of us, especially in the white collar field, it can happen where we step foot into the gray area, which is a little fuzzy, stay there too long, and all of a sudden we're in the illegal zone. And it just gets worse. And for others, we've stepped into the illegal area from the get-go. But I'm going to throw out there several examples that have been in the news, some of which are just in the indictment phase, others have been through sentencing, but it really doesn't matter because the Department of Justice has a 98% conviction rate. And so I hope I'm not the first to enlighten you because, well, just because if you've been indicted, you're going to be guilty. And if you think you're going to go to trial and win, there's less than a 2% chance. So let's go. First example is going to be a distribution company that's responsible for distributing controlled substances. And unfortunately, they had a very faulty paper trail of keeping track of where different drugs, these controlled substances, were going, and potentially falsifying their import documents. Not good. The second was a pharmacy that specialized in compounding, and somehow they went ahead and created relationships that um, that created incentives for physicians to to dispense additional prescriptions, and salespersons to encourage those prescription referrals. Again, not good. The next is a pharmacy, and they were prescribing an unusually high number of opioids. I'm not sure as to the particulars, but we're in the midst of an opioid crisis and have been. Again, not a prescription for a healthy pharmacy. And the fourth one has to deal with the Paycheck Protection Program inspired during COVID, which was meant to help companies during COVID. And for those that took advantage of it, this particular group took advantage of it to the tune of $53 million, and it came back to haunt them in not a good way. And so ultimately, when these things happen and you hear rumors or you get a target letter, um, whatever the vehicle is, where you hear that the FBI, Department of Justice, is about to come on you, you have choices. And it's always simpler if you own your mistake, if you can see through to your part in the crime. It definitely will make things cheaper, both with your attorney and in a lesser sentence if you can come and meet with the Department of Justice and plead guilty from the get-go. If you think that you are going to go to trial and win, understand that the feds, again, Department of Justice, has a 98% conviction rate. You don't want to let your indictment at some point, wherever you are in this pathway of the Department of Justice, don't let the indictment be your sole voice. Because as you prepare for your pre-sentence interview, and I hope that all of this information, I hope that I'm not the only, I hope that you've heard all of this before. I don't want to be the first person to inform you. But you don't want the indictment to be the sole voice, the sole piece of information that represents you to the world. That's your brand. That is your story. That is your autobiography. You don't want that to happen because it probably is not too flattering. And so you need to begin to craft your own story, your own autobiography, your own brand. So what do I mean by that? Simply speaking, from the brand perspective, Nike's brand is just do it. Apple's is their iconic apple with that bite taken out of it. Tesla has SpaceX. you need to be able to draft your own narrative where you've accepted responsibility, and this is going to take time. It's your story. It is a self-reflective, it's a arduous task. It takes time. It's written from, when you were a child to the time where you broke the law. And you need to do this because ultimately the judge is just going to see the indictment unless you've written your narrative and you've included it with a release plan into your pre-sentence report. But you have it done before your pre-sentence interview, because judges that are understanding know that crimes do not happen in a vacuum. They want to know you. They want to know what contributed. Why did you commit the crime? And so if you're able to self-reflect, be able to see through events that occur to you, that what went through your life as a child, adolescent, and why did you commit the crime? Can you accept responsibility for what you did? Have remorse for the victims you created. There were victims. If I can use Elizabeth Holmes as an example, she had victims. She had victims where there were those that put their reputations on the line. Admiral Mattis, for example, was on our board of directors. It wasn't financial, but it was his reputation. There were the guy who was the owner of Oracle. He put up money. That was money. But there are victims that you created. And then do you have a plan again to not reoffend? Because then sentencing, the judge is going to ask you, what's your plan to not come back to their courtroom? And they're wanting to want to know if you have remorse for the victims that you created. They don't want to know about you feeling bad for you, or you feeling bad for your family. They want to know about your plan to not reoffend, and your feeling about the victims. And I realize that it is a difficult concept right now at this point in time, but before your pre-sentence interview, there's a lot of thought that has to go into writing this narrative where you've accepted responsibility for the crime that you committed, that you've created victims, that you have remorse for the pain that you've inflicted upon them. You understand that you need to do better to make things right by them, that you understand that you'll go to prison. There was programs in prison that, that you, through the First Step Back, that are specifically to help you reduce your criminogenic needs, and that you also know that you want to invest in your personal or self growth, because you're able to, in prison, show the case managers, unit team, the warden, that as you invest in your personal self growth through taking these programs and other things that you can do constructively, that they may offer you options to exit, or offer you the ability for early release from prison. If you have a good narrative and release plan, the judge may do a departure below the guidelines for you, but there's no guarantees. And while you're in prison, there's going to be lots of frustration and disappointment. While you're there, don't let someone, when you have a bad day, let them use their iPhone to call home, because one, that could be another charge, and two, you could lose all of the good credit that you're accumulating as you try and do all the constructive things that they have available for you to do. But there is one thing that is for sure: if you stay on the true and narrow, you will be released sooner rather than later. And lastly, with the new BOP warden, she has risen through the ranks of not corrections, but psychology. And she is focused on education. She wants the inmates or persons that are there to be good neighbors. So this focus on education is important to her. And so if it's important to her, it should be important to you. And so the more that you can show that you're learning through reading nonfiction books, learning what's in the library, learning as much as you can, and beginning to build upon a release plan, which is a whole nother YouTube, you can successfully work towards release and possibly a new career. Hope you found this helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my YouTube. Have a good day.